April 14th, 1912. The world's largest passenger ship is sailing across the North Atlantic. Over 2,200 people are on board. The captain has received 6 separate warnings about ice, yet the ship keeps going. Just a few hours later, the most famous maritime disaster in history begins. But here's the question. Was the sinking of the Titanic actually unavoidable? Or could one small decision have saved more than 1,500 lives? Chapter 1. The Warnings. The Titanic has become one of history's biggest what-ifs. People often blame the iceberg, but the iceberg wasn't really the problem. Icebergs float in the Atlantic every year. Ships sailed around them all the time. So what actually went wrong? To answer that, we have to rewind. The Titanic wasn't blindly sailing into danger. Throughout April 14th, nearby ships sent multiple wireless messages warning about large fields of sea ice. Some of these messages reached the bridge, others never did. Why? Because the radio operators were busy sending passengers personal telegrams. Back then, wireless communication wasn't mainly for safety. It was basically the luxury version of texting. Passengers paid to send messages home, so safety warnings sometimes had to wait. One particularly important warning from another ship never reached Captain Edward Smith. Had it been delivered, it's possible he would have changed course. Chapter 2. Speed. Now here's the biggest myth. People often say Titanic was racing to break a speed record. That's not true, although it was moving at around 22 knots, close to its maximum operating speed. Why? Partly because captains at the time often maintained speed even in icy conditions if visibility seemed good. Slowing down dramatically wasn't yet standard practice. The ocean looked calm, the sky was clear. Ironically, that was the problem. Normally, waves crash against icebergs, creating white foam that's easier to spot. That night, the sea was almost perfectly flat. The iceberg blended into the darkness. By the time the lookout saw it, it was only about 30 to 40 seconds away. Chapter 3. The Fatal Turn. The lookout rings the bell. Iceberg. Right ahead. The bridge immediately orders hard a starboard and engines reversed. The ship begins turning, but it isn't enough. The iceberg scrapes along the starboard side. At first, it doesn't even seem that bad. There isn't some giant Hollywood-sized hole. Instead, the iceberg creates several openings below the waterline across multiple compartments. Individually, they're small. Together, they're deadly. Water begins pouring in. Now here's something fascinating. Some historians and engineers believe that if Titanic had hit the iceberg head-on, fewer compartments might have flooded. The bow would have been badly damaged, and many people in the front could have died, but the ship itself may have stayed afloat. It's one of history's cruelest possibilities. The crew did exactly what they were trained to do, and that decision may have sealed the ship's fate. Chapter 4. The Lifeboat Problem. This is probably the most famous mistake. Titanic carried only 20 lifeboats, enough for around 1,178 people, but there were over 2,200 on board. That sounds unbelievably irresponsible. But here's the surprising part. The Titanic actually carried more lifeboats than the law required at the time. The regulations were outdated, they based lifeboat requirements largely on a ship's tonnage and hadn't kept pace with ships becoming much larger. Everyone assumed the Titanic itself was the safest lifeboat. After all, it was advertised as being built with extensive safety features and watertight compartments. No one imagined the entire ship could sink. Unfortunately, they were wrong. Chapter 5. A Rescue That Was Too Far Away. As distress calls are sent, another ship begins racing toward Titanic, the RMS Carpathia. The problem? It's about 58 nautical miles away. Even at full speed, it takes hours to arrive. By then, Titanic is already gone. But here's the heartbreaking part. Another ship, the SS Californian, was much closer. Its crew actually saw strange rockets lighting up the night sky. Unfortunately, they didn't recognize them as distress signals. Its wireless operator had also gone to bed for the night. By the time they understood what had happened, it was too late. Now let's imagine something a little different. You've somehow traveled back to April 14th, 1912. You're a passenger on the Titanic. And, unlike everyone else on board, you know exactly what's about to happen. You know there's an iceberg waiting in the darkness. You know the ship is going to sink. And you know that more than 1,500 people are about to lose their lives. So, could you stop it? Your first instinct would probably be to find the captain. You tell him the ship is heading straight for disaster, but from his perspective, you're just another passenger making an unbelievable claim. You have no proof, no radar images, no satellite data, no way to explain how you know what's coming. Why would he believe you over his own officers? Maybe you decide to warn the passengers instead. You tell everyone to get to the lifeboats immediately. But it's only a few hours into the evening. The ship feels perfectly normal. The lights are on. The band is still playing. Most people would probably assume you're panicking or simply laugh and walk away. Then you remember the radio room. Maybe you could contact another ship. Except there's one problem. The wireless equipment isn't something anyone can use. It's operated by trained radio operators sending messages in Morse code. Even if you managed to get inside, would you actually know what to do? Changing the future sounds simple. Actually doing it might have been almost impossible. Chapter 6. Could it have been saved? Let's go through the possibilities. Could slowing down have helped? Probably. Even reducing speed slightly would have given the crew more time to react. Could changing course earlier have worked? Almost certainly. Several ships had already altered their routes because of the ice. Could more lifeboats have saved everyone? Not necessarily. Many of the first lifeboats launched only partially full because people were reluctant to leave what they believed was a safe ship. More lifeboats alone wouldn't have fixed the evacuation, though they likely would have allowed many more people to survive once loading improved. Could the iceberg have been avoided entirely? Maybe. But only if one of several earlier decisions had changed. That's what makes the story so tragic. There wasn't one massive mistake. There were dozens of small ones. Each seemed reasonable on its own. Together, they became catastrophic. So, could the Titanic have been saved? The answer is probably yes. Not because someone made one unbelievably stupid decision, but because history is often shaped by tiny choices. One message delivered, one course correction, a slightly slower speed, a few more seconds to react. Any one of those might have changed the ending. Instead, they all lined up in exactly the wrong way. More than 1,500 people lost their lives, yet the disaster transformed maritime safety. Lifeboat requirements were overhauled, continuous radio watches became standard, and the first International Convention on Safety at Sea followed soon after. The Titanic couldn't be saved, but the lessons learned from it have helped save countless lives ever since.